promise I won't say
that are in
anything.
different areas.
I never do. Not in here anyway.
How old is she? 15. She has her, like, that's amazing.
We're gonna get ready to start the public session.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on speaker. Uh-huh. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks.
You're ready for this discussion, this is in the basement. Take it away.
Okay. We're gonna get started with a discussion meeting, and first thing, we'll go down to presentations and facility update discussion. So I just want to run through a couple of things with our facilities. The basketball court outside is complete. We did have the painters come back and fix some things. We had the fencing company come back and tighten some things after our facility guys looked at it. CEC came back and looked at it. They sent them back in, cleaned some things up. Kids have been on it the last couple days, right, Mr. Redinger?
Yes.
So they've been using it for gym classes.
Win recess,
So
yeah, reward
kids are
thing.
using the space and it's open right now. So that project wrapped up along with the project at Offutt Field. So the new fence is up. They cut back the wall and put the curb in place. So that project is
They
complete too.
both look very nice.
Yeah, I think they did.
Yep.
They did a good job.
I was surprised the fence down at Offutt was shorter and didn't have like the wire across the top, but I mean, I don't think that's a big deal, it just surprised me.
I think it's, yeah, it might be, I forget. I don't know if it is shorter or
I think it's 10 foot.
might be. The outdoor classroom, so we discussed that last month. That's for the high school. They're going to redesign that pavilion and then put that out, and then we are going to start looking at electricians and landscapers for those other two pieces and kind of parse that get that project kind of chunked in different forms to hopefully get some more interest in people doing different parts of that project and save cost in the long run. So again, that's a project that we want to use all. We have grant funds for a couple donations to help out with. The other project is the HVAC project. So that is out to bid right now, and we are on schedule for October the 24th for a special vote at 7:30 p.m. on that. So bids will be open prior to that, and then we'll vote at that time.
Are we getting bids? Are we getting interest in?
I believe there were 3 or 4 that went through the walkthrough. So as far as
one reached out.
bids like coming in, I don't know that.
Yeah, and it did, sorry, go ahead.
There were definitely 3 or 4 that were on the
Yeah.
walkthrough.
And we got a call yesterday of a guy that's gonna come look at wants to, look at the facility, and he's interested in bidding, so
Fourth, so that's the fourth one.
that might be the fifth one.
It could be the 5th. It's either the 4th or 5th.
And that would be Esser's money.
That will be ESSER's money, and that's where we're gonna have to do grant revisions for the ESSER money.
The kind of a bid of this magnitude, most people will hand deliver these bids, so they're due in on October 16th at 2 p.m. So they're going to be here, they're gonna be delivered here, where the other bids were to CEC. So I don't think we're gonna know until that day how many, we're gonna receive.
They're gonna be open that day too.
They'll be open publicly at 2 p.m., yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one thing to add with Esser's money. We have time on our side to use it up, but at some point, and I've seen it where I work, that if you don't have some sense of urgency, even though you have a lot of months to go, you will eventually have that time flip on you, and time becomes your enemy. So I encourage all of us to work with a sense of urgency to make sure that we use the Esser's money that we have. and have a plan, not just waiting till this goes through and approved, but have enough that we can spend every penny that we've earned through ESSERS. So I will be happy to keep everyone top of mind with that, but I don't wanna have 3 months to go and then find out this piece of equipment is not gonna come in time, and then we're stuck, so.
I agree with that, but I feel time is not on our sides, and I think we should act like we have a sense of urgency to get this moving.
And equipment might not be here till next summer.
Yeah,
No, I agree with the urgency, Jeff, because right now, we're 14 months? And it seems like you have all this time,
You got till
But-
next September.
and it's not a small project,
right?
a couple $1 million.
Yeah.
Once we know what those bid amounts come in at, and if we're going to award based on what we received, we then know at that point we have to move to spend the remaining of the PSER. So that's gonna be a very quick turnaround conversation, so we can plan what
Yes.
is happening next.
But if we get into a situation like Jeff was alluding to, where we have some equipment that's not gonna make it in time, we need to be made aware of that sooner rather than later. So whoever we award it to needs to know, you know, if there's a risk, we need to know it up front, or sooner rather than later, you know what I'm saying?
Ken, do you and your team, do you have some ideas about what we can use any remaining funds on that we can act quickly with?
We threw some ideas out there, but without knowing, I think we'll be able to gather together and move on that once we get the bids
Once we get the
in.
bid.
That'll give us then we'll know, and then,
Sure.
because it's hard to tell, are you talking 1.5 million, or are you
Yeah.
talking
Right.
200,000 remaining? So
Right.
I think we've thrown some just general ideas on the table to start with.
So just so you guys know what to look for, that meeting on October 24th hasn't been advertised yet, only because we'll open the bids on the 16th. The architect will have a chance to review to see if we have something viable to present to the board for approval. So once we know that that's something, that we review the low bid, the low bidder, is within the budget amount that they thought this project would be, and we can move forward and we can bring them, then by the 17th of October, then I'll send a legal ad into the Tribune Review to advertise that special meeting to award bids. So just so I know there's some questions sometimes about when the advertisements take place. I don't wanna put the cart before the horse until the bids came in, or if we didn't receive any, then, we advertised for a meeting that we wouldn't need. So once the 16th happens, then we'll be able to place that advertisement in the paper.
Can we make sure we announce there might be one at the next meeting, in the public meeting, just so everybody knows?
And we have been, I think each meeting we have talked about these, we have been saying about these dates.
One question, Allison, with the outdoor classroom, our architect had a ballpark figure what they thought was a fair and reasonable price. Do they also have something for this project that's what they consider?
We did,
Yes,
we asked
yes,
them
we
for
did
that,
ask
and
them.
Okay.
we heard back.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we rest assured that every project we're gonna do, that they're designing, they're gonna have some kind of price that if it's overly inflated, we're gonna get a flag from them?
Yeah, that's what we
Okay.
had talked about. We had actually a pre-bid meeting where the architect and their engineer came in and met with Dr. Bissell, myself, Mr. Spooty. It was probably about an hour and a half, good hour and 45 minutes, where we went through the entire bid specification to make sure that every unit was addressed, where they're gonna be located, where the demolition was gonna take place,
We even went through, okay, if this happens to go over the budget, where are the areas that we can peel back on? And so we kind of have that all outlined
Thank you.
already, and everyone was on the same page as to where we're at with
Yeah,
that.
and we asked them for an overall estimate, cause we said, well, here's the thing, if you think this is a $2 million project and bids come in at $4 million, we have a hard decision to make, right? What's that level of inflation gonna be? So we've had those discussions at length as well too, so we know where they feel that we should come to you for approval, or where we should say, hey, this is not worth,
And just to be clear, this is taking care of all AC needs at Nicely and Metzger,
This will be all AC needs at
Wait.
Nicely and Metzger.
plus,
This will be all second floor technology wing of the high school,
Which would
which is below
include,
the office spaces.
would it include
And
band?
then the third floor band, chorus, and steam rooms,
Okay.
and the child development classroom. So it would restore in Metzger and Nicely, it would restore that second floor, it would restore that third floor music band wing, and the addition would be for the child development, which is where our preschool kids come.
Question on the outdoor classroom, what, if we're done with this? We're done with this, of course? Okay. The grants you spoke of for the outdoor classroom, they aren't restrictive like we were talking about with the tennis courts, are they? For that space? Remember how we were talking about the tennis courts have to be a green space or something? Or recreational
Oh,
space?
that was, no,
It's nothing like that, right?
No.
Okay, just wanna make sure, all right.
So those are the projects that are out there. I think we'll probably give an update of our last meeting next week with the committees.
okay.
I mean, essentially, we met and just discussed longer term too.
Mhm.
So we have some short-term things that we know we're gonna need to look at, but then we also have to start planning longer term and bigger and what we're looking at. So we can give an update at next week's meeting during the committee updates, if that's okay. The next item that we have, facility rental schedule. So I met with Mrs. Tamer, Mr. Sundry, and Dr. Baker, and we went through with our facilities policy, and we cleaned it up. We took, I think we had 7 or 8 examples of other local school districts and pricing. We had all our old pricing, and we went through and we tried to make it easier, cleaner, and a lot more simple to communicate to the community what the prices and agreements are whenever somebody comes in to use a facility. I'll say that the one thing that we outlined was if it is a nonprofit organization, community-related group, so if it's a recreation league or someone connected with Greensburg, Salem Township Recreation, and they're coming in to use facilities for practices and non-competitive modes, our thought is we want to provide that time for our kids to have a safe place with safe mentors, and we want them working with us, so long as it fits our schedule without, bumping practices and other things. We did say that if it's an event, if they're holding an event, then there will be a cost, but we created in here kind of a reduced cost for those groups as opposed to a for-profit group coming in and using a facility. So I'll pass this around. This is the spreadsheet that we came up with different, breaking it down between middle school and high school, athletics, and then our elementary schools. What we used to have, it was very difficult to manage because, let's say it was something like the gymnasium at the high school. It was the rental space, and then, do you want to use the scoreboard? Here's an additional amount there. Do you want to use the box, the booth that we have there, the sound system? There's a little additional cost there. What we tried to do was say, if you're using the gymnasium, you have access to these things, and it's one cost. You've got access to that. The additional costs come if we have to have a Greensburg-Salem employee there. And then that comes in at whether it's time and a half or the hourly rate that they have to be there. So we tried to make that a little more simple for people to see and to read. So you can see school-affiliated organizations and district-related groups. So if our students are running a senior project, they're using our facility. If our students have a student group activity, like we had the community event for the bonfire, they're using and that's no different than what we've always operated on. Those nonprofit groups again, so if we have something like Salem Township Gymnastics, they're gonna use Metzger's gymnasium, and that's for practices, and 80 of our students go for a couple additional hours every day with good mentors. That's a good thing for our kids, and so we're gonna support that. Now, something like Metzger Gymnastics, when they hold their competition in the springtime, usually late spring, in May, that is something that would fall under that event. And that would fall under the high school gymnasium, which we would go across, and that would be $300 for that use. And now if they had to have any additional, like maintenance or custodial fees, that would go on top of that. The commercial private groups, so we get, dance recitals and things like that that use the high school auditorium. That's usually what the request is. That would be a $2,000 fee. The former pricing of that was $800, and the reason we went with $2,000 is we were comparing that with all of our surrounding districts, and we were way under what they were charging. And so we're not at the high end of it, we're not at the low end of it, but we're kind of right in the middle there with $2,000. And then that's where you see that nonprofit organization, community related, they would fall under that $1,000, that half price. These are for 8 hours at the bottom. If it's anything 4 hours or less, it's half of that price that's on here. We will determine what their group is. So before, people were going in and they were determining what their group was. So everybody was putting that they were a nonprofit, whatever, because all the prices were zero. And now we're in the background trying to figure out, and so we will determine who they are based on a phone call and a conversation and talking to them, and then we'll determine where that stands. Most of our rentals, we already know what groups they fit in. Any questions on this? So we just want to add it as something that will go along with the facility rental policy, as this is going to be our guide. And then hopefully we can come together and administratively we'll update it over.
So before, when we rented out off the field, there was like a charge for the paper, the paper towels, and
Mm-hmm.
that's gone, right?
It's just all in that price. We know that you're going to need bathrooms. We know that you're going to need those things.
But the cost of a custodian is in addition to that.
That's addition. Yeah.
Looks good.
Any questions on that? Okay, then we'll move forward. We'll put it on for next week and go ahead. And then our plan is, every 3 years or so, just check on it, check what other schools have moved to, and just keep it fresh. What's that? Oh. Okay.
I didn't know the one-room schoolhouse was one that we would.
Someone inquired about that with me.
If it's on there,
I didn't have an answer.
you do
It's
now.
on there, it's
So we added that because it was never on anything, and I think it's used mostly by the parent group at the one-room schoolhouse, John and Kevin. Or just in general usage. Yeah.
PTA uses it, there's the foreign language group uses it, what's that?
So we added it that it's an option there. Technology insurance discussion. What we would like to do for 24-25, I think, this has been kicked around a little bit, but when a student loses a charger, for instance, and we have to replace a charger for a laptop, it's $60 to $70 to replace that charger. When we get cracked screens or broken devices, what we would like to do is institute an insurance plan where students and families can pay into the insurance plan that covers them for those damages, and it helps in reducing our overall cost of replacement. The other thing is making sure that when somebody loses a computer, just like if they would lose a textbook, that's an obligation that you owe us. Now, if you've paid into the insurance, then that would be a little bit different. So we really want to protect ourselves and help kids protect themselves too, and put some accountability on people using the equipment. There is some accountability with this if we're trying to give these devices and using this equipment. So we're gonna kind of come up with a plan that would also go with our technology policy. Are we okay? Do we want to have any discussion on that? We'll come up with some options for that, and then we'll present those options to you. But this wouldn't be anything that would start until next school year, but we'll start
What's it gonna
prepping for
cost
it
now?
now. Well, that's what we'll present to you. But we again, same as we did with this, we're gonna pull examples. We're one of very few schools that have anything like that.
Now, if they turn the device back into the school year, they get their money back for the insurance, or is that go towards next year?
Those are things that we would put into different options of what we could do with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move forward on that planning and we'll present something down the road. Okay. All right. Oops. Which one else am I working on? Okay, we'll have a report from Dr. Nedley, or outside board reports. We will have our personnel list next week. So starting on the superintendent's report, I'm on 11.1. We have one administrative service agreement. This is to help us out with our Act 80 processing. That is with Method Automation Services. And then we have two educational service agreements, one for outside in and one for Adelphi Village. Any questions on the service agreements? Okay. The next item, we have our policies for a second read. On this document, the policies are under the public content, and there is also a document on it that's a side-by-side that you can go into any of those. I do have for everybody, this is just the hard copy of the policies. So if you want to take one of these, just so you have a hard copy of everything that's up there. And they're listed on page numbers starting with page 4, and that's because there were other pages on top of that last time. I do want to open it up. Since that has been on there now for a month, any conversation, any discussion on board policies, which all of them fall under the 000 category?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, the first one that I thought we should give some attention to is 005.1, duties of board officers and appointed officials. PSBA is recommending deletion, however, I think that we should not delete it. It does not seem to be particularly procedural to me, because it's, and I looked around, so I looked at Illinois, New York, Montana, Virginia, Idaho, Oklahoma, Washington, and Mount Lebanon, PA. And all of them included the duties of the president, the vice president, and so on and so forth. And I also looked at, like diligent, which I believe that's what board docs is through. And it said that policies are legally binding and enforceable based on the school's adoption and adaptation of broader, for example, federal or state policies and regulations. Procedures are how these policies are carried out and enforced. They are not adopted or governed by the school board, and since this is about who we are as a school board, that seems to me that they're not procedural. And a procedure or a protocol is usually administrative and provides the details of how policies are to be implemented. Procedures are the responsibility of directors and staff, not trustees. That's just the word that they used, and this is sort of our responsibility. And then their changes for policy should occur less frequently, and the duties of the president, vice president, and so forth should not be prone to change, and if they're not voted on, then that seems to me also a concern. And then also this document, which is School Board Governance Basics, notes that the board seeks continuity of leadership, even as it experiences turnover in membership. The board accomplishes this by using written board policies to guide board operations by providing thorough orientation and training for all members, so on and so forth. But if we're seeking continuity of leadership, then we should be able to turn to our policy manual to aid with that continuity. So I guess I
I tend to
disagree.
agree with Emily on this one. You know, like, let's say that Jeff decides not to run next term, you know, on his next term, and, you know, we get a new president. Well, they need to know what their roles and responsibilities are.
And it's also, I think, if it's in the policy manual,
Just as an
then
example.
the public can also look at it, and, you know, they're to hold us accountable based on how we are operating on that. And if we don't have how we're supposed to operate in the policy manual that is governed and adopted by us, then have we really adopted our responsibilities as president, vice president, and so forth? So I guess I would advocate not deleting that one.
I think I would have to lean towards agreeing with Emily on this. When I see this language would be more appropriately contained in administrative regulations, I'll have to question based on past practice. If we really put forth an effort to redefine these and put them into administrative regulations.
Right,
And I've always seen us as a board that governs and doesn't manage. Let's keep it where it's at.
I'm okay keeping it there.
right.
Yeah. That's why we discuss these things.
Why
so
we
that
discuss them.
Right.
What else, Emily? What else?
What, is that a question?
She said
She said
thank you.
thank you.
Oh, okay, yep. I also, we had talked last time about 006, which is on meetings, and there's twofold things here because there's also 006.3 that, and maybe I missed it, is that 006.3 is the recording and transcription of school board meetings. PSBA is again recommending deletion of that. And I guess maybe I missed it, looking through this, but I didn't see where it was redundant with language in policy 006. If somebody could point that out to me, that'd be great. Maybe I just overlooked it.
I believe there's another policy that's not in the 000s that outlines those recordings.
Okay, yeah, because that's.
Let me take a note of that, and I'll.
Yeah, because if we could hold on that one,
Mhm.
because maybe I just missed it, but I
So
didn't.
you're saying 006.1?
No, so 006
006.
meetings,
Dot three.
and then 006.3, so meetings, and then, because it, 006.3, PSBA says, hey, this is redundant with language in policy 006, and I was like, really? Where? I missed it. Because if it's not redundant, I do think it's important that we record, transcribe, and make available to, and maybe 006.3, if it stays, and it's not redundant elsewhere, should be revised to, make those more accessible to the public. 'Cause we have a lot of older folks in our district. Not everybody can get out on a Wednesday evening, and I think it's beneficial to have our discussion meetings and our voting meetings available on YouTube, and they haven't been for.
They are tonight.
Yeah, well, but
Or
like
live.
not, but well, okay, but only live.
Mhm.
So if, if you have church all evening this evening, and then you want to go and watch it tomorrow night or Saturday when you're finally done with the work week, you can't. And
You can, I've watched it.
they're not on YouTube.
I've watched it, you can go on the website, they have them.
On what website?
I've seen it in archives, the meetings,
So our
There are
current
archives.
yes.
policy allows that, like, we are to record the meetings.
Right.
The voting meetings. The voting meeting should have a recording, and then we produce the minutes off of that. We are to keep that recording, but we do not have to post that and make that public. And we have not done that. So the old recordings used to be by tape, and they were audio tapes. So we have audio tapes that go back a long time, that are here for public record, but we don't, they're not out there.
Right,
So
and they had been, because of COVID, I
during
guess.
COVID,
And so I guess if this is not redundant, perhaps we should consider making those recordings available on YouTube, or, I don't know what platform
I
you.
seen it on YouTube.
Well, they've been taken off. They've been
Well,
taken
I
off
watched it.
recently.
I'm just
They
telling you I
used to
have.
be. They used to be. They're off now.
Whatever.
But
I'm
Penn
waiting.
Trafford has like 13 years worth of YouTube videos. Are they there now?
The, so, the.
Because I looked like 2 weeks ago.
Recordings from, back to January are there. They're under the live tab, not under the video tab.
Okay.
Yeah, and all of the voting
Okay. Hey,
meetings,
stand corrected.
but it only goes back to January, so your point still stands about previous ones and other ones that have been recorded.
Right.
But that also brings up a point about accessibility, that if you don't know to look under the live tab, if you're just clicking on videos,
Because
there's
you might
only
think that's
two.
live.
the first decision has to be made is, do you want these recordings, do you want them out there?
And there's pros and cons. I recognize that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And do you want those out there? All the time? They're accessible. If anybody puts a right to know and they want to say, give me the recording for, December of 2022, we have to produce that recording for them.
Okay.
That goes beyond the minutes, because the minutes are not word for word verbatim. They
Not a
shouldn't be,
Right.
not a transcription.
Yeah, and, you could make the argument that it's better to not put them out on YouTube, because wouldn't that be nice if we weren't in this little room and we instead had to have more seating because so many people were, coming and being participatory in, the process. But I don't know, it's something that I thought was worthy of discussion, and maybe not deletion, because I think it's good to have a policy of doing this. So if it's not redundant, then I guess I wouldn't want it deleted.
Since we are live right now, I will say that my concern of any recordings are that there are way too many people out there right now who take advantage of those to splice, to modify, to make it what they want it to be.
That's
to
fair.
take a quick 15-second blip and leave out a bigger piece of the conversation, blast that out immediately, and spread misinformation to everybody.
That's fair. That's a fair
That,
concern.
I worry about that, because we have too many adults in our world that have zero digital citizenship skills and have no clue how to operate in a technology-laden world. And it's causing way too many problems.
And that's fair, and that's something
And
that we
that's
should
my
consider.
concern and yeah, they're out there, but for them to say, I'm gonna put a right to know request in, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna listen to that recording here responsibly, versus trolls that will use it in a bad way.
Okay.
That's my concern.
Okay, yeah, that's
But
a fair concern.
But, yeah.
So, but maybe,
And I would,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I would agree with you on that, Ken, because right now we're dealing with the world of AI too, and things could be transposed and put out there,
Once again.
as you said, in an improper way, not complete, and be taken totally out of context.
Yeah, very true. Good point, Robin. Yeah.
I do think, and I'll check on that, because where it says that it's, I'm gonna look to see, because I do think there's another policy somewhere that addresses the recording.
Okay.
But if it's not, then we do need to keep the
Right.
6.3.
So, and I'll
And
look
maybe put in the
through.
policy how long that recording lives.
Yes, we can make a decision on that.
Yeah, so, but I
Can
just,
you weigh in on what he thinks this is our solicitor?
I agree 100% with the superintendent, what he said. 100%, because I deal with it in the criminal world.
okay, thank you, Lee.
We'll have we do have that standing committee meeting for the 24th also, so we can come back and review these and revise in
Okay.
between, yeah.
Okay.
You know what policy I'm advocating for, I'm not gonna beat the dead
I know
horse.
what you're, go ahead, go ahead, say it.
No, it's okay, I don't wanna bring it up again.
Okay. Well, this is a discussion meeting, so,
No.
no, okay.
Everybody here knows what it is.
Okay.
Okay, what's the next one we want?
All right, next one,
Wait a minute, Emily still has,
I was also wanting to look at 004 membership. Overall, I thought the policy was fine, but clear down at the very, very bottom on student representation, I felt that the student representation section was overly vague. I thought the wording for the current section 11 had greater clarity. And so I guess I thought that taking that language and moving it to the new, from PSBA, because I like, the board believes in the importance of communication with the district, including communication with the members of the student body. To implement this process, the board will accept senior high students as non-voting representatives who will serve in an advisory capacity. The students may be in attendance at regularly scheduled board meetings and will be given the opportunity to participate in discussions with the board as part of school governance. The board reserves the right to eliminate students from personnel and legal deliberations as appropriate. And the administration is directed to develop administrative regulations for selection, orientation of student representatives to the board. I thought that language had far greater clarity than essentially, the board authorizes student representation on the board in order to facilitate effective communication, to provide an opportunity for students to participate in school governance. I thought this was better, it was more clear, and just outlined what their role was to a greater extent. So, I would like to put that language in place of what PSBA has. And with modifications, like if somebody says, well, I don't like the word right to eliminate students from personnel and legal deliberations, like that's kind of abrupt, in terms of wording, but.
I'm absolutely fine with the new language that's recommended. I think it covers it quite well.
It doesn't clarify, however, that they're non-voting representatives.
Nor does it clarify that the public can't vote either. But it's a given.
Sometimes less is more. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I'd like to look into that a little bit more.
what if,
Can't we just throw in as non-voting members after representation? Or something like that, on the board as non-voting members? Just
because,
would that be,
Mhm.
that get you what you want?
yeah, that's,
And we read the board authorizes student representatives on the board as non-voting members in order to facilitate effective communication and to provide an opportunity for students to participate in school government. And I assume they wouldn't be an executive session, because that's,
Correct.
legal and,
That's illegal.
yeah, see? I didn't mean it was legal for them to be there, I meant we were discussing legal and,
Right.
thank you, Lee, for clarifying that.
We can take that to the 24th and work with that.
okay,
Is that,
yes.
yep, that's fair.
okay.
So, and then the last one that I wanted to look at was 011, Board Governance Standards Codes of Conduct. And I don't know, were you able to get printed off the revision, Ken? 'Cause I'd sent you a revision on
No.
that one. So, so I I looked at this and I saw that there were things that I thought were beneficial about what PSBA provided, but then I also thought there were things from the current one that should be included, like there wasn't anything about curriculum discussed actually in the new one, which I thought was kind of odd because we're charged with kind of making sure that our kids are getting a good education, which would be the curriculum. So we need to be part of that discussion, and in the revision that I included had more of that in there, as well as some language changes that I thought were apropos. And then also, I guess at the bottom of the current, the Section 2 Code of Conduct for School Board members was included in here, whereas it's not included in the present one, and I really liked the language of it. It says, "We as members of our local Board of Education, representing all residents of our school district, believe that striving towards ideal conditions for effective school board service to our community in a spirit of teamwork and devotion to public education is the greatest instrument for preserving and perpetuating our representative democracy. The future welfare of this community, commonwealth, and nation depends upon the quality of education we provide in public schools. In order to maintain a free and strong country, our civic obligation to the community, commonwealth, and nation is to maintain free and strong public schools in the United States of America without surrendering our responsibilities to any other person, group, or organization." And it goes on, and I really liked that 1 through 6 that I thought should transfer to the new
So this policy here, this is basically PSBA saying, are you as a board adopting PSBA's, what we say, principles of governance and leadership? So this is their language of their principles. So it's basically, we're going to adopt your principles of governance and leadership.
Okay.
And this is how they outline their governance and leadership.
But shouldn't
So
we
that's what
have
is.
that? Sure, but shouldn't that be embedded within our policy? If we're going to adopt it, shouldn't it be visible to the public what we're adopting?
We're adopting their principles of
Right, but up
governance
here,
and leadership.
it only says, "This board policy supports the principles of governance and leadership adopted by the board and signed by the individual school directors." And then it's not there, whereas it's in this one. So, if people want to see what, pray tell, we signed as individual school directors and adopted as a board,
That would be an attachment to it. Like that could be a separate page that's not the policy, but it's a page that goes with the policy.
okay,
Like the document.
okay,
The document would be separate.
okay, just so long as that, and that's
How
not.
would it go with the policy if it's not part of the policy? I'm confused on that.
Well, because
It goes on, so an example is Title IX policy. You have Title IX policy, but going with Title IX, you have your document of your complaint process. The complaint process is not part of the policy, it's an attachment to it that you have access to.
Right, so like on this one, there were some language changes, like I like the progressive tense, I guess, of the current policy more than the way it's worded in the new one. So that would be a change, but I guess I really like that, and if it says up at the top that we have adopted these principles and we're supposed to adhere to those, then I thought it should at least ride along with the policy. Just the public, and we should, if it's in there, then by golly, we ought to try to live up to those policies, those principles. So I don't want to remove that entirely. If it's just a document that, people can go click and see what they are, that's great. But I didn't want it to just vanish into the ether. So people are like, oh, what is this first line all about? What is that? What did they sign? What did they adopt? I don't see it.
Yeah, and I do want to make sure, and I know I've said this a bunch of times, but when we get these suggestions from PSBA, they're coming from a lot of legal expertise of we've been through many legal cases. So they put out PSN reports bi-monthly. This policy needs this tweak, and that's usually because a lawsuit occurred and there's one word, we-
Calisthenics.
calisthenics, one word can trip you up on things.
Okay, but having the code of conduct riding along with the policy isn't going to affect that,
I don't
especially
know
if they're
that.
referring to.
I don't know that.
But they're referring to it here.
Yep,
So why would that be a problem if they're referring to it here?
don't know. I don't know,
Okay, well, then why not include it, since it's already referred to?
because I don't wanna I don't wanna step on a landmine.
Jeremy says they send these
Don't
out
wanna step
because
on
he
it.
doesn't want a lawsuit.
Maintaining a free and strong country, our civic obligation of the community, commonwealth, and nation is to maintain free and strong public schools as a landmine? I don't think that's a landmine.
Didn't he send a report if, why they make the revision, if I remember correctly, with, on that PN?
Yeah,
Like
that's
it,
what
like
the,
they'll say why they add a policy or why they delete it or why they're removing certain words.
So,
Like they'll,
Emily, that last
yeah,
part
that's
you
the
just
first
read,
couple
Yeah.
pages here.
adding that to this would satisfy any reservations about this policy?
Well, it's not really a reservations, I think that it's not as strong as it could be. I mean, if this is our board governance standards and our code of conduct, I think our code of conduct for school board members ought to be visible, and this is an aspiration.
So what PSBA is saying is this replaces the district's prior policy, board governance standard code of conduct, which we had in April 2014, with PSBA's current version of the principles of governance and leadership, which was adopted by PSBA. So what we have prior is not the current PSBA, so we can't say that we're adopting PSBA's governance if it's not their language.
Well, then where's the principles for governance and leadership that we supposedly adopt, or they want us to adopt, and they want us to sign by individual school directors? Where is that?
Well, these are the principles that they outline on that draft policy.
Well, then I think their principles are inadequate, because I think number 3 on this section 2, code of conduct, is particularly important. So, I find their code of conduct wanting, I guess. So,
So are you proposing to not adopt PSBA's current code of conduct and adopt our own code of conduct? Because we can't say it's PSBA's if we modify it. That's,
well, why not? I mean, we're a local school district, we should have our own code of conduct, we can base it on everything that they have. I mean, like, I don't think it's a problem to align decisions to a policy or collaborate with you, like, I don't think those are problems at all. I just think that we need to keep that kind of thing at the forefront of our minds, that, that we should be aiming to the very best of our abilities to maintain free and strong public schools, and that's our civic obligation. Like, that's really important. And, so, I guess I think that would be prudent to add that to our code of conduct, because if we're just signing something that they put out, to what degree is that really ours? That's whatever they want. Okay, well, okay, but you guys seem to be missing some.
and I'm just clarifying that your request is to not adopt PSBA's code of conduct and to write our own code of conduct as a policy, as an option to that policy.
Sure.
That's your
Yeah, we can base it off
suggestion.
theirs, but sure, why not? Like, this is what we as a board should do.
What's the liability to the school district?
Well, I mean, my recommendation would be to go with
What's the liability to
PSBA's
the
language,
school
and
district if we don't
there's,
adopt theirs?
we can have differences, that's okay. My recommendation would be to go with PSBA's, and I understand and hear exactly where Emily's coming from on that.
Well, I think
If they're recommending
I
it,
just wanna add
they're
some
the
things.
experts, what's the recourse to the district if you don't follow them?
We don't know, that's the problem.
That's just the Pennsylvania state.
They're the ones
School board
recommending it to them. What's the recourse to the school district if you wanna do this?
Just because somebody recommends something, John, doesn't mean we have to
Well,
rubber stamp
I
it.
understand that, but
We have to rubber
he's
stamp
saying he's
everything.
recommending it, that we're paying these people a service, They're making a recommendation.
Well, what-
Don't have
Doesn't mean
one-day
we have to rubber
lawsuits
stamp
here.
everything that's recommended.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, I'm gonna recommend that policy. If 5 people say no,
Oh,
and
that's
we want a
fine.
different policy, that's okay.
What's the
That's
recourse?
okay.
That's what I want to know.
I don't see an
There's-
issue with.
There's not gonna be any
this
bad
policy.
ramifications. It's our code of conduct.
I don't see a problem with recommending this or approving this.
I mean,
But
I would
on the other
entertain
hand,
it.
I'm not gonna, just because somebody recommends it, I'm not gonna rubber stamp it.
Because there's,
Emily, if you wanted to show us what you think it should say, like adding things to it, I would entertain looking at it. I don't know if everybody else would.
I
Why don't
actually
you
have something.
table
Just-
this and have a policy meeting and do it there?
We do, on the 24th. This is just a second read.
Okay,
This is-
okay.
This is just to get a second read.
Okay.
So maybe on the
Can
24th,
I
have something
suggest
where
we
you
talk
show your
about
head.
this on the 24th with
Yes.
the policy?
I'll send it.
Yes,
I
you
already
can.
have it.
Great idea.
I thought I had it for today,
Take
but
it
it
to the
must not
policy
be on.
meeting, make it back to the board.
So
Okay.
we'll bring it up on the 24th, and we'll go through. So we have, I think, 3 or 4 that we brought up that we're gonna go through on the 24th.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, good.
All right.
Okay. All right, next item. Conferences, workshop requests. Okay, this is for the Westmoreland County Forum for Workforce Development Leadership Summit, November 9th through the 10th, Boone County, Kentucky. The Ignite Institute, at a cost not to exceed $1,600. The next one. And I'm going to move, next week, gymnasium usage will be down in section 16 for facilities and facility usage. But we do have 2 requests, one for the Westmoreland County Coaches Association tournament and one for the WPIAL sectional tournament, both for wrestling.
Can you include what the fees are when we do the vote?
So, well, no, not yet, because we haven't
Okay.
officially done those.
Then maybe, costs to be determined by,
Well, we usually will put, as per the administrative regulation of the facilities
Okay.
policy. And then other facility requests, Greensburg Parks and Recreation to use Hutchison Elementary Gymnasium Mondays and Wednesdays, November 6th through January 31st, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We do have the health and safety plan reauthorization, so as long as we are using ESSER funds, every 6 months, we have to reauthorize our health and safety plan. The only changes to that are the dates. A couple people have since moved out of the district, so we've replaced them on the team, and outside of that, there are no changes.
I just want to say I hate reauthorizing this every 6 months, so I can't wait till we're done with the ESSERs, just being honest.
I think-
But there are some links that are broken in there too. So you're linking to sites that don't exist anymore.
Like CDC site or Department of Health sites.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go in and update that. I'll be quite honest with you, we didn't check we are not changing the plan.
Yeah.
We're moving forward, so we'll check the links though.
There are a couple of things I wish we could take out, but I know we can't. Yeah.
And then,
Are we doing like what we have in there? Like I noticed like there were some cleaning requirements in there.
Mhm.
Are we still doing those?
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
recommend approval of the donation of 10 AEDs to be paid in full by the Center of Healthcare Solutions, made possible by the Richard King Mellon Foundation.
That's pretty awesome.
And we do have on Monday the 9th.
Are we gonna distribute those to the different schools?
Yes.
To all the schools?
Yeah, so we already have AEDs in the schools, but this will increase the number of AEDs and our access to them. And we also have, at least, I know the high school, even though an AED, it tells you step by step what to do, they're gonna add that to their safety training of just a refresher of opening it up and what will it tell you to do, because when you're in the middle of stress, you need to train for it. So Monday the 9th, we do have safety training in all 5 buildings, and we also have a senior project in the high school gym and first floor classrooms. It's a wellness fair for our teachers and staff. So Independence Healthcare, they're helping out with providing wellness tips for teachers, stress management, different checks that they can do to take care of themselves, which we believe is just as much a part of safety and security as, learning the pieces of an intruder drill or other things. We also need to recognize that if you can't keep your stress levels down in a stressful situation, you can't be safe. So that's all part of it. So Caitlin Mankins is putting that on for our teachers and staff. She's done a phenomenal job, and just have to pull it off on Monday. So just wanted to let everybody know about that. That's it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the visitors? No? Okay. See you next week. Friday night.
All right, Robin, thank you. Absolutely, feel better. Bye-bye.